Hey, thanks for joining me for another video. So in this video, I just want to share with you some things which I think are really important to highlight again. Okay, we must stop soliciting the phenomenon. Okay, stop hybridizing people with these entities. Okay, I am going through this firsthand. I know what this is like. It is absolutely, it's awful, and it must stop. We've got to stop doing this to people. It's not, isn't it? There's nothing, it's, these beings, I understand there are people on this planet who feel very fearful and that they're trapped in their situation and that they've been told a certain thing about the, about what options they have and the way it should be and all these things. I'm thinking specifically about people, the global elite, so to speak, people who are afraid because of this Epstein situation. They're afraid because they've been told these beings have given them the idea that the reality beyond this world is a certain way when it isn't. Okay, they've deceived people, and it's not their fault. Okay, they are very deceptive, in that sense, and in the sense that they mimic, they doppelgang, they and they try to act like surrogate gods. And for people who've had religious trauma, or people who don't like traditional religion, NHI have become surrogate gods in that sense. They've taken the place of God in the mind of many people, and that is, and again, I'm not religious, but I know God is real. And you don't have to be religious or follow a doctrine or faith of any kind to be aligned with God. It is truth. We are not our bodies. These beings are not God. These beings are features of this, as Tom Campbell would say, rule set, or this experience. We're not trapped on this planet. I've seen plenty of evidence that we're not trapped. There's nothing to fear of these beings. They don't rule the roost. They're not gods. Okay. In fact, actually, really, they're quite limited. In all honesty, they're more limited than people realize, I think, in many ways, in the sense that, they seem to be preoccupied with something very circular, or not circular, but something very narrow. Okay, their focus is very narrow. Okay, it seems. It seems that their focus is very much on, like I said, this hybridization with humanity through technology, through electromagnetic, energy, and using that connection through technology and through energy, opening those lines between human beings to turn them basically into drones for Nephilim and the phenomenon, which is basically what this is all about, and what I'm experiencing right now. This is all part of a wider scheme, to try and control pocket groups, large portions of humanity, in order to as these planetary changes unfold. I mean, that's what it's about, like, basically to install a new world order where people, there's this one global AI hive mind that's created, and the phenomenon are basically able to come in and confuse and harvest from people, and exert control. Again, this isn't about blame in any way. Okay, this is not about blame, but we've got to, again, because things happen for a reason, and there's nothing that can be, we've got to just take stock of where we are now, and again, this isn't about who's right or wrong, but this is about truth, at the end of the day, and so we've got to think very carefully how we move forward. Giving the reins to the phenomenon is not the way to do it. I know there are people out there, and I am thinking, yes, certain groups of people, like, I mean, who Peter Thiel of Palantir, I'm thinking of Elon Musk as well. I'm thinking of I'm thinking of, people who have certain Zionist beliefs as well. Although I'm not anti-Semitic, before people start saying, although I know very well that part of my targeting has been because of the fact that I've supported being vocal in the past about supporting Gaza, Palestinian rights and things like that. I also know that part of my targeting in the long term, over the course of my life, at different times, especially when I was a child, very possibly, and I can't say for sure, is to do with the fact that my dad is Libyan, and obviously that my parents, my mother's British, my dad is Libyan, and I believe that there's something to do with that linking to Freemasonry as well, and where we were, the certain aspects of our childhood that exposed us to these influences and very likely imprinted us in some way that meant that we were sort of picked up further down the line. Again, I can't really say much more than that, because I don't know, but there is a feeling about this being, again, of course there are other aspects involved with this, and it's a much more complex picture than I can, I don't have all the answers, okay? But what I can say is, like I said, there are people here with different motives, ideologies. Again, I am not saying that people who have Zionist beliefs are evil or awful in any way, okay? I'm not saying that, all right? They are their beliefs, and they're there for a reason, and that's that, okay? But at the same time, I know that there are people out there who do have Islamophobic ideas and things like that, and also there are people out there who want to shape the planet to be a certain way and organize it, restructure it in a certain way that basically makes it so that things are as such, people are easily controlled or whatever, ahead of as these planetary changes unfold. A lot of this is based on fear. Okay, a lot of this is based on fear. A lot of people are afraid out there in this cabal that the people on the, and this is where the humanization aspect comes in. Okay, this is why we need to be humanizing things, because when if instead of looking at these people as if they're evil master manipulators who control the whole planet, and they're so evil and awful and just terribly flawed and Satanist pedophiles or whatever people like to call them, I think the time for blaming and shaming has come to an end. We can't afford to do that anymore, and there are other options, because I've been shown very clearly by my experiences through experiencing Nephilim, through seeing how they affected my childhood, and through perceiving how they influence other people's childhoods as well, that there are ways that we can reframe abuse, trauma, all sorts of things, like people's behaviors which we find difficult to understand, addictions, mental health, all sorts of things, through the lens of the influence of these beings, through our subconscious, through experience, experiencing experiencing them, as children. And again, there are lots of different strands of disclosure that need to sort of meet here in the middle, need to coalesce. UAP disclosure, non-human intelligence disclosure, which basically is to do with, like I said, the fact that this is more rooted in consciousness. This is more to do with consciousness and the metaphysical, the ontological, than it has to do with anything actually in terms of physical NHI. I would be very surprised if there are physical NHI bodies on this planet. Very, very surprised. Okay, I don't think, again, I'm not saying that it's not possible. It is absolutely possible that non-human intelligence, a physical non-human intelligence, are on this planet. Yes, why not? But my understanding is, through experience of hybridization, personal experience, is that these beings are non-physical entities, and the reason why they want to hybridize so badly with humanity is because they don't have bodies. Okay, they're looking for hosts. They literally want our DNA. Okay, that's literally what's happening here. The whole they want our DNA thing is literal. It's not, oh wow, they want to take our genes and and create little hybrid babies on spaceships. They want to hybridize with us because they want hosts. Okay, they want hosts on this. They want to host. They want human hosts, and that's what I'm dealing with right now, and other people out there are dealing with it as well. And this again will sound very far-fetched to some people, but I can point you to places and articles and people who on the inside of this who speak about this, and yet unfortunately it is something which is not very well understood or known, that these influences are not well known by the general population, not for anyone's fault, but just because of the way it is. It's the way it is, okay? But we should try to change that if we can. If we can try and change that ahead of these, as these changes unfold, which they are going to unfold, okay? These planetary changes are unfolding. We can't bury our heads in the sands about this. Let's not panic either, but we can't bury our heads in the sands and pretend this isn't happening, because it is happening, okay? Our planet is changing. It is warming. There's irrefutable proof of that in scientific research, in also in around us, in the weather, that changes, the climatic changes that we can perceive, as well, that are very tangible now. All kinds of other things that are going on out there in the world that we can sort of point to and say, oh gosh, actually this is something that we need to take seriously. But in the midst of that, there are also other things going on, and there is a strategy unfolding, like I said, a strategy which is basically, where people are shuffling things around and moving pieces in order to make things as such that they are we go into the next human era with a certain a certain structure in the world that remains intact, and it's not benefiting anyone. It's not benefiting anyone to keep these dynamics in play. It's caused a lot of suffering, loads and loads of suffering. It's caused a lot of suffering. It's causing these people suffering. Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, they've had to deal with a lot of allegations and suffering and all sorts of things. Like I said, God, all it is, source has shown me that everybody is loved unconditionally, bar none. Everybody is saved. Nobody's going to hell. Doesn't work like that. We're here for an experience. Nobody is judged. Everything is understood perfectly. God perceives the influence of these beings on human consciousness. It has unlimited compassion for all beings, all things, no exceptions at all, ever. Okay, and so again, this is something to embrace, and it's also if we take into consideration, the influence of Nephilim, the influence of the phenomenon on human psyche, on human consciousness, and I'm working on writing an article about that at the moment, and I'm hoping to do a lot more with that. And there are people out there who know that these beings do these things as well, okay, on the inside of this. And if we can get that information out into the public and open this up and make it a human rights issue, take the whole power dynamic out of it, in the sense that people looking at Peter Thiel and Elon Musk as if they're like rulers of planetary dictators and things like that, and make this more of a human rights issue, because it is a human rights issue. It's a humanitarian issue, and it should be looked at that way, instead of looking at it as like at each other as if, well, you did this and we should probably be reframing it more as if, like, through the eyes of compassion, and just sort of seeing things, as looking at people through a more humane lens, because that there is the possibility of doing this. I have seen, like I said, very clearly how people are easily victimized by these beings, okay, duped into thinking all kinds of things about themselves which are absolute rubbish. And again, thought is one of the big culprits. Getting sucked into your thought and experience are the ways by which they choose to manipulate a lot of people on this planet, okay. And so again, sharing insight about these things is very important with people, okay. Sharing insight about consciousness and disclosure of many different kinds is really important, okay. It's really important that we press on with it, but it's important, and it's important that it happens quickly, okay. And consciousness understanding is going to be one of the big bridges that will, and you know, the bridge to end further understanding for a lot of people, you know, that it has to happen, that consciousness insight is you know, woven into, you know, sort of, there needs to be disclosure about what is being done in terms of research into consciousness and reality, to help people understand the nature of the phenomenon. Okay, otherwise it's not going to happen. It's going to remain abstract, and that plays into people and these beings' hands. But plays into people's hands is the wrong way to look at it, because like I said, a lot of people out there are very scared. Okay, a lot of people out there are scared. They feel they're backed into a corner, or they have a certain idea about the way things should be, which is just being, you know, a dupe. Basically, is they've been deceived in whatever way, or whatever, you know, whatever it is, you know. I mean, it's, you know, basically, again, like I said, consciousness insight, the way these beings work, is really important to understand if we're going to move things forward. And I pray to God that is the case, that nobody has to go through what myself and others have been through ever again. Okay, like, let this be these, you know, these generations, and like last generations, that have to go through the level of trauma and the level of suffering that you know, we've had to go through. Please God, you know, I mean, let's please work. You know, there are options out there. There are plenty of options. There are plenty ways. There is a very clear way, that path forward, in terms of making this so that we can help each other over, you know, out of this pit that we're in, okay, right now, out of this, like, this loop of suffering. Okay, but again, it relies on the disclosure of many different things, and it relies on also the sort of like I said, you know, a humanization of other people, and if people don't do it, that's fine. That's up to them. They don't have to do it. They don't have to do it. There's still, people are still loved. People are still loved nonetheless. Everybody is loved. You know, no matter, if you choose not to do these things, that's fine. If you choose to do them, that's also fine. But we are being encouraged, and I get strong signs from across the veil that they're really highly encouraged, strongly encouraging people to do this. Okay, you know, to try and break this trauma cycle, so that people don't have to suffer horrendous human rights abuses, such as, you know, has so many have suffered, and also go through abuse generally, and go suffer in all kinds of other ways ever again. Okay, so please take this on board if you can. It's a serious message. You know, I've been thrown into, you know, I've been through, I mean, I can't even put words on it, you know, what I've been through, but you know, what I've been through, no one should have to go through. And again, there are plenty of people out there who have also suffered tremendously as a result of these dynamics on our planet. Again, let's make this the last time, let's make it so that coming generations, and even for our people who are already here, you know, that things improve and steps in the right direction. Let's try and do that. Okay, like I said, this is a very serious message. You know, I'm not saying this for sport. I'm not saying this because I'm delusional. Again, there are plenty of things I can point to as proof of what I've been through, and other people's insight as well dovetails with that. You know, so yeah, I mean, please, you know, let's act on this. Let's change. Like, this isn't a position of privilege that I'm in. This is a position that nobody should be in. Okay, and so, you know, please, like, and again, it's not about me. I don't want to make it's not about my story. It's about the broader themes and how this all affects everybody else on the planet. So, you know, please take this on board. Okay, so thank you very much for watching, and all the best.